My name is Carlin and I'm from the Wetland Center, and I'm here to talk about pollution and what we can do to make it a little bit better. So I'm going to go over a few things first. First of all, I'm going to talk about our watershed. So a watershed is a collection of bodies of water traveling from high elevation to low elevation, and they wash out into a larger body of water. For example, in Baytown, we've got Goose Creek, Cedar Bayou, Trinity River, San Jacinto River, all kinds of bodies of water that eventually wash out into our bays and in the Gulf of Mexico. So, I'm going to talk about a couple different types of pollution. There's point source and there's non-point source. So, point source is whenever you can point to the source. You know exactly where that pollution came from. For example, a guy eating a bag of Doritos throws a bag on the ground. You know where that came from, you can point to him. And there's non-point source, where you don't know where it came from, and it's likely that it came from a lot of different places and ended up in one location together, like a big pile of garbage on the beach or something. So, we also have the concept of runoff. So that's important with our watersheds. So whenever it rains, all that water is going to collect in these bodies of water, and it's going to run off through them through a storm drain. Storm drain. I think we all know what those are. They're the rectangles on the side of the road. Pennywise lives in there, but he'll leave you alone if you don't throw your garbage in there. So the storm drain's function is to drain the water from the storms so we don't have floods. But if we have some trash in the street or something, maybe that could end up in the storm drain, and then it'll go right back out to our watershed because they're not filtered. So we want to make sure that we're taking care of those things. Right here, I have our watershed. Looks pretty clean, pretty good. Right here, I have our storm drain. So here's the street. It'll rain, and it'll wash out into the storm drain and into our watershed. Now right here, I have our happy animals, and I'm going to disperse them into our clean watershed. Looking good. All is well. They're having a good time. So, I'm going to demonstrate a couple of things that we're doing outside every day. Some grass clippings and dirt. I'm going to toss that into our street. Some pesticides. Some oil. Some fertilizer. Looking pretty good. Plastic bottle. Styrofoam cup. Aluminum can. Poop. Dog poop. A fishing pole. Pretend there's a fishing line attached to it. A 6-pack ring. And a plastic bag. So, all of this is just kind of sitting in our street right now. It could be considered point source pollution because I just put that all right there. So, it came from me. We can point to the source. It's me. I'm the source. But, there's bad news. There is a hurricane coming. So, we're going to get a little precipitation going. And it's going to cause all of our water to run off into our storm drain and right back out into our watershed. So whenever that happens, all that pollution that we tossed in there is going to go right into our watershed. Let's add a couple waves because that's what happens. And now our animals aren't so happy. It's not so good for them right now. So this isn't really good for our planet. It's not really good for us. It's not good for our animals. Like for example, this bottle could take about 450 years to break down. This could be bad news for certain animals. The poop that we tossed in here, every day in the Houston area, 53 dump truck loads of dog poop is produced. Just in the Houston area. That's a lot. It's a lot of dog poop. It's kind of crazy, honestly. Alright, so this isn't really, it doesn't have to be like this. There are definitely ways that we can fix this. Because we don't want to live like this. We don't want our animals to live like this. But they're solutions, so that's really, really good for us, right? And the animals. So these aluminum cans, we can just recycle these. They're 100% recyclable. Just toss them in the recycling bin. We can just reuse them over and over again. Our plastic bags, we can reduce them. We can reuse them. And a lot of stores have little plastic bag banks where you can take the plastic bags and put them back in there, and they can reuse them themselves. Plastic bottles, we can reduce these by getting just like a big cup and reusing this. You also save a lot of money and a lot of floorboard space because you're not throwing plastic bottles on the floorboard of your car. We can recycle them when we're done with them. We can reuse them, but be careful because your plastic might melt. That's a little gross. I'm sure all of us, well, most of us at least, probably have a little trash can in the bathroom where our plastic bags are in the trash can, so we can reuse these. So that brings me to our 3 R's. I already went over them: reduce, reuse, and recycle. A lot of the stuff in here we can reduce, we can reuse it, and we can also recycle it. Now there's also a 4th one called reject. So whenever you're at the convenience store and and you get a Snickers, and the person's like, hey, do you need a bag for this? I don't, do you though? Do you need a bag? I don't really think you do. So you can just be like, no thanks, I'm good, I'm trying to save the planet. And you can just reject it. So that's really, really easy. That's another thing that you could do. So our planet doesn't have to be like this. There are some ways to get around that. Just to recap, this is our watershed. The watershed is a collection of bodies of water traveling from high elevation to low elevation into larger bodies of water. Our watershed is affected by point source and non-point source pollutions. Whenever that pollution ends up in the watershed, then it just affects all kinds of other organisms and stuff like that. So, we have runoff. That's whenever your litter and stuff can travel through that rainwater, through ditches, stuff like that. So we don't want that. I mean, runoff's fine, but not the stuff that's in the runoff if it's bad. And we have our storm drains. Those are, for draining the stormwater. So we don't flood, but we got to take care of it to make sure that things that we don't want don't end up in the watershed. So all of that combined, we have our 3 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle, our 4th one called reject. And whenever we practice good skills of properly disposing of our garbage, we can do something good for our planet. We can just have a little mindfulness and say thank you to the planet. Don't throw your garbage on the ground because it really doesn't belong there. And go say thank you to a tree, do something good, and save the turtles. And thank you.